Welcome back to Red Hawk Media. Today we're going to be working with 3D shapes. And we're going to create our own shape and actually make it 3D so that you can personalize this. So if you were designing a new logo or a mascot or a crest, this might be actually very useful to you. I'm just going to put this in a standard 1080p resolution here, so 1920 by 1080, 300 with my resolution, and you can make your choice of white or transparent. It doesn't really matter. And I click OK. Once I'm here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a shape. First, I'm going to unlock my background layer, double click on it, click OK, create a new layer, and on my new layer, I'm going to create my first shape. Choose my foreground color that I want to work with, so I've got a red, and I'm going to go with the rectangle tool, and I'm going to go ahead and draw that new shape that I'm working with here. There we have it. Now, I only want to make that shape in particular 3D. So what I want to do is I want to actually quick select that. And a very quick way of doing this is I can go ahead and hold Command, and I can click on the shape over in the layer. And you can see that it's selected it. Now, from here, if I want to, I can work from my 3D menu. And currently my 3D menu is not showing up. If I want it to show up, I can click on 3D under Window. And here it is. This is your 3D icon. Okay, so that brings up all my options that I've got here. This can get a little bit confusing here to use this. We'll come over to this in a bit when we're like moving the camera around and stuff. And there's going to be a lot of tinkering that's involved with this, so be patient. A lot of features to learn in the 3D settings. I'm going to go ahead and just break that down. I'm going to go back up to 3D, however, and I'm going to go up to Repouser, and I'm going to go for my current selection, which is my rectangle that's currently selected. And I go current selection. Now this is going to take me into a whole new realm here where the 3D options are going to become available. And it takes a little bit because there's a lot of rendering that's involved with this. To begin with, I have to specify some things. First, I can pick the style that I want, but I'm not really going to tinker with that at all. First thing I'm going to tinker with is the depth. How big do I actually want this to be? So to start with, I'm going to say that I want this actually to be 5 pixels in depth here. Extrude is how far it's going to actually like stick out. Okay, the height, width, if I'm going to add on a bevel, which I think I will just so we can see some of the shadow effects, I'm going to add on. We'll start with 3 and 3 for the bevel. Okay, so that's going to go all the way around the outside. Alright, now I can see a little bit of the preview over here of what's happening. You can see my bevel going around the edge. You can't tell that I've actually got any depth to this object yet because I have to rotate it. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now here's my 3D object. Now I want to be able to see it so that I can actually work with this. So I'm going to change my camera angle a little bit here so that I can actually work with that. This tool over here is your camera rotate tool. Okay? If you don't see that at the front, you can hold your button down and you can see all the different options that we've got here. Okay? So 3D rotate camera tool. Right? Now, right in the middle, I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to drag down. You can see this cool little grid that shows up. And you can now see the object that's actually on that grid. Okay? Right now, my object is perfectly above the grid. So it's like sitting above there. I can move the object with another tool that's very useful, which is over here, and that's your 3D object rotate. So let's say I didn't want to have this object just like this. I want to actually stand it up on end. I can go ahead and same process, hold shift, and I'm going to go ahead and I can rotate that object. Okay? I'll rotate it any direction I want. You can see how it kind of snaps to, though. See it just right there. Now I know it's perfectly flat, even with the plane. Let's say for a moment that I don't really want the object to sit right on the plane. Another tool that you can use here is I can go to my 3D object pan tool, and actually my slide tool. Sorry, slide tool. And same thing. I'm going to hold shift, and I'm going to go ahead and drag this one way or the other, okay, and this will take it left or right, sliding it one way or another. Okay, here's another tool. Okay, we've got our 3D object pan tool. Hold shift, and I can take it off of the object, off of the plane, and you can see it snap to there for a moment where it grabs right onto the plane, or I can have it above. Well, for our purposes right now, I'm going to have it above the plane. Okay, now a couple things that I want to do actually with this particular object. I'm going to go over to my 3D menu at this point. Okay, and with the current shape that I'm working with, I want it to actually catch shadows. So the ground plane, which is our grid down here, I want that to actually be able to catch shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. It says that the shadows on the ground plane will only show up if you have the ray trace render quality. That's not actually true. That's it's for preview purposes. So we click OK. Okay, and now we've got some more functions here. I've got a 3D object, but it's pretty plain Jane. There's not a whole lot of realism to it, so I want to add some light shadowing to it. Now, a few things before we get into the light shadowing, though. I want to personalize this 3D object a little bit more. Yes, we can tell it's 3D, but it's not a very interesting looking 3D. So this extrusion, which is the gray area that extrudes from the face, I'm going to go into that layer. I'm going to open up that layer by double clicking on it. And here's that layer. Now nothing presently is on there. That's why it goes to the default gray. So I'm going to choose a color that I want to work with. Actually, I'm going to go with a darker red. And I'm going to click OK. And now that I've got that as my foreground color, I'm actually going to fill this layer. Remember, our quick key for filling layers with a color from the foreground layer is Alt-Delete. So I go ahead and hit that. Now it's still not a very interesting layer, so we're going to go ahead and add a quick gradient to it. So I go, after double clicking on the layer, I go to my gradient overlay, and now I can personalize my gradient overlay that I've got. Let's go ahead and click on the gradient overlay. So just clicked here, brings up your editor. And now on the first stop, I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to choose my new color that I want to work with here. And I'm going to click OK. Now on the other slide, I'm going to go with a darker color, like black, and we get this kind of gradient. I like the way that looks, so I'm going to click OK, OK, and now I can either close this layer, which it'll prompt me to save, or I can go right back over to my other project. It'll take a second to update, and there it is. You can see that it starts with the black and it goes to the red. So what I'd want to do actually is flip-flop this pattern. Easy way to do that. Go into my gradient overlay, and I hit reverse. Now it's going the other direction. I can change the angle, the scale, all of that here if I wanted to. Click OK. Go back over, and it'll process, and there's our new gradient. Okay, so I've got a bevel, I've got the lighter red, and then the dark red that goes to the black gradient here. Now, to make a little bit more realism here, I want to actually start adding some lights to this. Lights are pre-created on each object, and I can choose what kind of lights that I've got here. The first one that I'm going to go with is an infinite light. You can see in my scene here, my 3D scene, that I've got an infinite light 1, 2, and 3. It automatically creates those for me. I'm going to go ahead and set those up here. So I'm going to leave it at infinite light, but I'm going to change my softness here to 100%. Otherwise I get some really dark shadows that are like way out of control. Okay, with this one selected out here, if I rotate this around, click on my light, click on my light move tool. Now this is over in my palette here. I believe I can also find it over here. So I can go into, maybe not in this one, maybe in the camera one. Here we go, 3D. Well, it looks like it is only available actually over in this menu. So over here, I look for the light bulb, look for the rotate thing, and I go ahead and click on that tool. Okay, with my light rotate tool, now with one of these selected, I can go ahead and rotate these different lights. So this light is way down underneath my object actually. So I'm going to bring it up above so it starts to change the lighting a little bit here. So I'll bring that up there. Okay, I'm going to go to my second light, and I'm going to take the shadows and put them up to 100% of softness. And I'm going to go ahead and let's go from this side over here. Just shine that way. We've got one more light here that we're going to take care of. I'm going to take the softness, put it up to 100%. And now with this one, I'm going to have a secondary light just kind of coming from the side here. So I've got all three of my lights at this point. Now if I want to actually see this taking place, or see the shadows that are going on here, what I need to do is I need to switch from my light setting in my 3D scene over to the scene itself. This will show me all the layers that I've got going on right now. Okay. Now remember that warning message that we got earlier about it will only show up if we have certain render settings? We're going to actually go to Raytrace Draft here, and that's going to give us the possibility of seeing what's happening. Now you're going to see this grid processing over your 3D object, and you're going to see it actually create some of the shadows. Okay, now this will go on and on and on. We're just at the draft setting. Don't set it to best, otherwise it will go for quite a while. Okay, every time the grid goes over the area, you're going to see where the shadows are. Remember that when I did this, I placed all my lights over on the left side of the image, so the light was shining this way, therefore creating the shadow on this side. Okay? But it's kind of a neat effect. You get an idea of how Apple creates all of their stuff on white backgrounds with cool shadows that actually catch the plane. This is how they go about doing that. Okay? So every time this grid passes over this, it's just going to improve the quality a little bit more. Okay? And if I want to interrupt this process because right away I realize, man, I really don't like the way this looks, I don't like the shadows, the angle and all that, I can click on the screen at any time and it interrupts. And whatever it's got processed so far, it will show me. So now I've got this 3D object with some shadows that are actually being casted here. Now, if I were designing, say, a crest, this would be very useful because if I had a shield or an emblem or a placard or like a big base that text was sitting on, this could be very useful for setting up that particular portion of it. Today, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and tinker around with some different shapes and see if you can come up with something that would be useful for the for a crest. That's it for our episode today on 3D shapes. Next episode we will focus on 3D text and how we can actually intermingle that with this shape. Thanks for joining us again. This has been another episode of Red Hawk Media. Bye.